There is a particular kind of anger that should embarrass you if you're paying attention. It's the flash of contempt that's too big for its cause. Someone cuts a line, or brags a little too much, or talks about themselves without stopping, and something in you doesn't just notice it. Something in you ignites. A heat rises that's out of all proportion to the crime. And if you are honest in that moment, you'll feel that the intensity isn't really about them at all. It's coming from somewhere older and deeper in you, and it's been waiting for an excuse. We usually do the convenient thing with that heat. We aim it outward. We tell ourselves the other person really is that contemptible, that our reaction is simply justice, simply good taste. And we move on, never asking the more dangerous question. Why this? Why does that particular flaw, out of all the flaws in the world, reach into me and pull so hard? Because the things that enrage us most about other people are rarely chosen at random. They tend to be very specific, and that specificity is a clue. It's pointing at something. The trouble is, it's pointing back at us. This is the territory the psychiatrist Carl Jung spent his life mapping, and he gave the thing at the center of it a name that has outlived almost everything else he wrote. He called it the shadow. Here's a test you can run on yourself, and it's uncomfortable. Think of the kind of person you can't stand. Not someone who's wronged you, but a type. The show off, the needy one, the coward, the one who always plays it safe. Now notice how much energy your disgust has. Real hot, disproportionate energy. Jung's unsettling claim is that the traits that trigger us most violently in others are very often the traits we've buried most deeply in ourselves. We don't hate them out there because they're so foreign. We hate them out there because they're so familiar and we've spent a lifetime pretending they're not ours. So, what exactly is the shadow and where does it come from? Because nobody is born with one, it's built. Jung's simplest definition is almost brutal in how plain it is. The shadow, he said, is the thing a person has no wish to be. It's the sum of everything in you that doesn't fit the picture you've decided to present to the world. And the reason it exists is that becoming a person in the first place requires editing. As a child, you slowly learn which parts of you are welcome and which are not. You learn that your anger frightens people, so you put it away. You learn that your neediness gets you mocked, so you bury it. You learn that your selfishness, your sexuality, your cruelty, your strangeness, your raw ambition, all of it gets a certain look from the people whose love you depend on. So you take those parts and you push them down into the dark, out of sight, even from yourself. What's left? The polished, acceptable version you show the world. Jung called the persona. The mask and everything you had to exile to build, that mask gets bundled together in the basement of the psyche. That bundle is the shadow. The crucial thing is that the shadow doesn't disappear. It can't. Nothing in the psyche is ever really deleted. It just goes unconscious, which means it goes out of your control. And from down there, unseen, it keeps acting on you. It leaks, it erupts, and most of all, it gets projected. Projection is the shadow's favorite trick, and once you see it, you can't unsee it. Because you can't look at your own shadow directly, it does the next best thing. It finds someone out in the world who carries a hint of the trait you've buried and it lights them up. Suddenly, that person seems to embody the exact quality you can't tolerate, and your buried feeling comes rushing out at them with a force that has nothing to do with who they actually are. The disowned thing in you has found a screen to be played on. This is why the people who rage hardest against some sin are so often secretly fighting it in themselves. The preacher obsessed with other people's lust. The cruelest critic of vanity, checking the mirror, we meet our shadow again and again on the faces of the people we judge. And this is not a small or private problem. Jung thought it was one of the most dangerous forces in human history, precisely because it operates without our knowledge. He wrote that everyone carries a shadow, and the less it is embodied in the individual's conscious life, the blacker and denser it is. Read that carefully. The shadow doesn't get smaller when you ignore it. It gets darker and more concentrated. The more determined you are to be nothing but good, pure, righteous, clean, the more material you're forced to shove into the basement and the more pressure builds behind the door. That pressure is where atrocity comes from. A person who is certain they have no darkness has simply lost track of theirs. And a person who has lost track of their darkness will inevitably see it out in the world instead on the faces of their enemies. Whole nations do this. They locate everything rotten in some other group, some scapegoat, and then feel righteous, even holy, as they destroy it. The most monstrous things human beings do are rarely done by people who feel evil. They're done by people who feel good, who are certain they are on the side of the light fighting the darkness, when in fact they've just exiled their own darkness so completely that they can no longer recognize it staring back at them. This is the great paradox of the shadow, and it's worth saying slowly. The danger is not the person who knows they have a dark side. The danger is the person who is certain they don't. Self righteousness is not the opposite of cruelty, it's frequently the engine of it. The people who have done the worst things in history were overwhelmingly convinced of their own goodness. Which means that owning your shadow, admitting that you too contain pettiness and aggression and the capacity for harm, is not a step toward becoming worse. It's one of the only reliable protections against it. You can't be unconsciously driven by something you're willing to look at. So far, this probably sounds like the shadow is just a basement full of everything ugly about you. But here's the turn that makes the whole idea worth your time. Because the shadow is not only the bad, remember how it formed. The shadow is made of everything you had to exile to be acceptable. And as a child, you didn't only exile your cruelty and your greed. You also exiled things that were threatening to the people around you for entirely different reasons. Maybe your boldness was too much for a timid family, so you buried it and became small. Maybe your wild creativity didn't fit, so you put it away and became sensible. Maybe your desire, your appetite for life, your capacity to take up space and want things loudly got you punished, so you locked it in the dark with everything else. For many people, some of the most alive parts of themselves are down there. Their fire, their spontaneity, their capacity to say no. The Jungians have a phrase for this. They say there is gold in the shadow. Not everything you buried was buried because it was bad. Some of it was buried because it was too much, too powerful, too inconvenient for the people you needed to please. Think about what this means for the tired, careful, overly nice person. The one who can never get angry, never be selfish, never disappoint anyone. We tend to admire that person, but Jung would say something darker about them. A person with no visible shadow has not transcended their dark side. They've just buried it so deep that they've buried their vitality along with it. Because the same wall that holds back your aggression also holds back your assertiveness. The same lid that traps your selfishness also traps your ability to have boundaries. When you exile the dark, you exile the energy that comes with it. And what's left is someone agreeable and faded and quietly exhausted from the effort of keeping half of themselves underground. So, if the goal isn't to be a person with no shadow, because that person is either lying or half dead, then what is the goal? And here Jung says something that runs against almost every spiritual and self help instinct we have. He did not say defeat the shadow. He did not say purify yourself of it, or rise above it, or fill your mind with enough light that the darkness has nowhere to live. In fact, he warned against exactly that. He wrote that one does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. The whole project is not amputation, it's integration. The aim is not to be good by cutting away everything bad. The aim is to become whole by turning around and finally looking at what you've been refusing to see and slowly, carefully taking it back into yourself. Now, integration is the most misunderstood word in all of this. So, let me be precise about what it does and doesn't mean. It does not mean acting out your shadow. It does not mean that because you've discovered your buried cruelty, you should now be cruel, or that owning your aggression means unleashing it on everyone around you. That's not integration. That's just letting the basement run the house. But it also does not mean the opposite. The thing most of us actually do, which is to keep the door bolted and pretend the basement is empty. Integration is the third path and the hardest one. It means consciously knowing what's down there. It means being able to say, yes, I am capable of that pettiness, that rage, that selfishness, that desire, and because I can see it, I get to decide what to do with it, instead of it deciding for me. The difference between a person who has integrated their shadow and one who hasn't is not that one is dark and one is light. It's that one is whole and one is divided. The divided person is run by forces they refuse to look at, which is why they keep being surprised by their own behavior, keep projecting their worst onto others, keep erupting in ways they later can't explain. The whole person has met their own darkness, shaken hands with it, and kept it in the room where they can see it. They are not better because they have less shadow. They are freer because they are no longer at war with the half of themselves they used to deny. And there's something almost gentle in this. Underneath the difficulty, because the shadow in the end is not your enemy. It's the part of you that got left behind. It's everything you had to disown at 3 and 7 and 13 to survive the particular world you were handed and to win the love you needed. It's not malicious, it's exiled. And like most exiled things, it doesn't want to destroy you. It wants to come home. The eruptions, the projections, the disproportionate angers are not the shadow attacking you. They are the shadow knocking in the only language it has, trying to get your attention from a door you spent your whole life refusing to open. So go back to that flash of contempt, the one that's too big for its cause. The next time it rises in you, you can do something other than aim it outward. You can treat it as a message. You can ask the question that turns judgment into self knowledge. What is this person showing me about myself? What am I looking at out there because I refuse to look at it in here? It will not be comfortable. Meeting your shadow never is. But every time you do it, a little of the energy you've spent keeping yourself divided comes back to you, and you become harder to provoke, harder to manipulate, and far less likely to do real harm while believing you're doing good. The people most dangerous to themselves and everyone around them are the ones who are sure they have no darkness. The people you can actually trust are the ones who have looked at theirs and stopped pretending. Wholeness was never about being all light. It was about being able to face the dark in yourself without flinching and discovering, when you finally do, that some of what you buried down there was never your shame. It was your gold.